Welcome to our International Student Brief program. Today, we've got some intriguing news lined up for you. First off, UK private schools are planning to charge higher fees for international students to counter the upcoming 20% VAT on fees. This move aims to ease the financial burden on domestic students. Next, a new survey reveals that over a quarter of Brits would still travel abroad even if they tested positive for COVID-19. This highlights a significant shift in attitudes towards the virus, with many willing to go on their trips despite the risks. Lastly, it's good news for aspiring students as analysis suggests it will be easier to get into a Russell Group university this year. The number of clearing places has increased, offering more opportunities for prospective students. Please stay tuned for more details on these stories. Telegraph: private schools in the UK are contemplating increasing fees for international students in response to Labour's VAT policy set to take effect in January. The policy will impose a 20% VAT on private school fees, potentially leading to higher expenses for domestic students unless schools can offset the costs. Some institutions, like Brighton College and Queen Ethelburga's Collegiate, already have differential pricing for foreign students, and more schools are expected to follow suit. Smaller schools, which lack substantial financial reserves, are particularly concerned about the impact of the new tax. Education consultant Neil Roskelley noted that international students' parents might not be overly worried due to the advantages of a weaker pound. The number of international students in UK private schools has fluctuated, with a notable decline from 29,000 in 2020 to around 26,000 currently. Schools may also seek to reclaim VAT on taxable activities to mitigate the financial burden. The Institute for Fiscal Studies has estimated that removing the tax exemption for private schools could generate an additional £1.6 billion annually, which Labour plans to invest in the state school system. The Independent: a recent study by Confused.com reveals that over a quarter of British adults would travel abroad even if they tested positive for COVID-19, provided they felt well enough. This shift in attitude comes as global COVID regulations have significantly relaxed. Notably, 28% of surveyed UK adults admitted they would travel if they had COVID but felt well, and 13% said they would travel even if they felt unwell. This change in perspective is underscored by recent events, such as Team USA's Noah Lyles competing and winning a bronze medal in the men's 200-meter final despite testing positive for COVID. Similarly, Team GB's Adam Peaty tested positive for COVID after winning silver in the men's 100-meter breaststroke and subsequently had to miss other events due to worsening symptoms. The research also found that around 10% of respondents had to cancel or rearrange travel plans due to COVID since 2020. Additionally, only 28% of Brits stated they would wear a mask on transport if they knew they had the virus, highlighting the evolving public attitude towards the pandemic. Yahoo US: as the fall semester approaches, the Mid-Hudson Valley is preparing for the return of college students, which will impact local traffic. Most institutions, including Marist College and SUNY Dutchess Community College, will begin classes on Monday, August 26, with move-in dates starting as early as August 19. Bard College will start classes on September 2, while the Culinary Institute of America will resume on September 10. Vassar College will commence classes on September 3, with students moving in from August 26. In Orange County, Mount St. Mary College and SUNY Orange County Community College will also start on August 26, with the United States Military Academy at West Point beginning classes on August 19. The academic calendar for these institutions varies, reflecting a mix of start dates and move-in schedules that will see students returning throughout August and early September. This influx of students will bring a noticeable change to the local communities in Dutchess, Ulster, Orange, and Sullivan counties. Telegraph reports that this year, it will be easier to get into a Russell Group university due to an increase in clearing places. Analysis shows that 3/4 of the 24 elite universities have courses available through clearing, which matches applications to unfilled degree places. The PA News Agency found over 23,000 courses with vacancies for undergraduate students in England, including 3,892 courses at 18 Russell Group universities. This is a significant rise from last year, where only 15 universities had 2,021 courses available. Universities like Liverpool, Manchester, and Durham, which had no courses listed last year, now have vacancies. The overall number of university places available through clearing has risen to 23,306 across UK universities, up from 22,410 last year. This increase comes at a time when universities face financial pressure due to a drop in international students. Experts suggest that the cost of living crisis may have also contributed to a decline in domestic applications, with a slight drop in the proportion of students applying for university places this year. Yahoo US shares the story of a person who moved to South Korea to teach English and escape financial difficulties in the US. After graduating with a degree in psychology and $60,000 in student loans, the author struggled with high living expenses and debt while living in the US. Inspired by an acquaintance's experience, the author moved to Daegu, South Korea, to teach English. In Korea, the author found financial relief as the employer paid for housing and public transit was affordable. Despite sending money home to cover loan payments, the author enjoyed a higher quality of life and extended the teaching contract multiple times. However, after a few years, the author returned to the US to pursue freelance writing but found the cost of living even higher and struggled with debt and isolation. Eventually, the author returned to South Korea, where life was more affordable and enjoyable. The author has now paid off debts and plans to stay in Asia, valuing the lower cost of living and the friendships made there. Deutsche Welle reports on the mass exodus of Nigerian youth seeking better opportunities abroad. This trend includes both experienced skilled workers and students. Many are leaving due to the lack of opportunities and economic challenges in Nigeria. The article explores the reasons behind this migration and questions whether it will eventually stop. The search for better living conditions, job prospects, and educational opportunities drives Nigerian youths to seek a future outside their home country. The Sydney Morning Herald reports that Labour's plan to cap international student numbers could push Australia into a recession. Economist Professor Richard Holden from UNSW Business School warns that returning to 2019 student numbers would result in an $11.6 billion economic hit in 2025, equating to almost 0.5% of GDP. This reduction would not only impact tuition fees but also the broader economy through decreased spending on rent, food, and entertainment. The federal government aims to slash net immigration from 520,000 to 260,000 by next year, linking the surge in international students to housing stress. Education Minister Jason Clare introduced a bill to cap student numbers, but the limits are not finalized. Holden's analysis shows a 20% reduction in foreign enrollments could trigger a recession, reducing economic growth to -0.16%. The Education Department values higher education international students at $31.8 billion for 2023, but Holden argues their true economic value is $57.7 billion due to job creation and spending. The move could particularly impact sectors like accommodation and food, already struggling with high insolvency rates. Chief economist Peter Tulip from the Center for Independent Studies agrees that while the cap might ease housing pressures, it would ultimately impoverish the country by stifling a major export market. The Toronto Star reveals that David Gilchrist, a Canadian with extensive experience in overseeing elections, deliberately voted twice in the 2019 federal election to test the electoral system. Gilchrist first voted through the special ballot process on September 23, 2019, and then used his father's voter information card to vote again on October 11. He admitted his actions to Elections Canada officials the next day. Despite his confession, it took nearly 5 years for the Commissioner for Canada Elections to announce the finding, citing the complexity and cooperation required for the investigation. Gilchrist was fined $1,250. Another rare breach involved Chinon Fong, a foreign national who attempted to vote illegally in the 2021 federal election. Fong falsely claimed his information was used fraudulently to apply for a special ballot and that someone tried to steal it. Investigations revealed he was not a Canadian citizen and had attempted to cover up his actions by providing false information to the RCMP. Fong was also fined $1,250. Both cases highlight the stringent measures and penalties in place to uphold the integrity of Canada's electoral system. The Telegraph reports that British universities are aggressively recruiting students from the Caribbean and other regions to counteract a sharp drop in overseas applications. University College London, UCL, and the University of York are among institutions expanding their recruitment efforts in places like Guadeloupe, Martinique, and Southeast Asia. This comes amid a significant decline in foreign student visa applications, exacerbated by a Tory crackdown on student visas and their dependents. Home Office figures show a 15% drop in overseas student visa applications and a 90% reduction in dependents. International student fees, which constitute a substantial part of university income, are crucial as domestic tuition fees remain frozen. UCL has launched expensive preparatory courses for international students, while other universities are seeking recruitment agencies to boost enrollments from India, China, and other regions. The sector faces a funding crisis, with about 40% of universities in England expected to run budget deficits this year. Universities UK Chief Vivian Stern expressed shock at how quickly visa restrictions impacted student numbers, particularly from India and Nigeria. The financial strain is compounded by a currency crisis in Nigeria, making it difficult for students to afford foreign tuition fees. The Sydney Morning Herald. The federal government has stepped into a heated dispute between the University of New South Wales, UNSW, and the National Institute of Dramatic Art, NIDA, over a contentious 1,000-bed student housing project. The proposed 15- and 16-story towers on a university-owned car park near NIDA have sparked significant opposition. NIDA's CEO, Liz Hughes, emotionally argued that the development would cripple the institution's operations, while actor Sigrid Thornton warned it could undermine the Australian arts sector. The Federal Arts Department has expressed concerns that pushing the project forward might breach UNSW's lease obligations, urging collaborative resolution. NIDA's alumni, including Mel Gibson, have also voiced their opposition. The Sydney Eastern City Planning Panel is set to reconvene to discuss potential amendments, with NIDA advocating for the matter to be escalated to the planning minister. The Sydney Morning Herald. Australian universities are grappling with the fallout of neoliberal policies that have pushed them towards financial self-sufficiency, largely through international student fees. This shift has created a host of issues, from inflated vice-chancellor salaries to questionable academic standards for overseas students. The Morrison government's controversial fee adjustments, which doubled costs for arts degrees, have further complicated the landscape. Western Sydney University's Vice-Chancellor George Williams recently highlighted the financial barriers young Australians face in pursuing higher education. The Albanese government acknowledges the need for fee reforms but is moving slowly. Meanwhile, universities' dependence on international students has strained housing markets and raised questions about the true economic value of this revenue stream. Critics argue that the corporatization of universities has led to an imbalance, with more administrators than academics and precarious job conditions for young scholars. Yahoo US. Mark Legeros, a 65-year-old retiree from Minneapolis, has found a new lease on life in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, where his cost of living has dropped by 50%. Living off his IRA, he enjoys a comfortable lifestyle with a $600 monthly rent, a stark contrast to the high rental prices in the US. However, Legeros emphasizes the importance of cultural respect and adaptation for those considering a similar move. He recounts the challenges of adjusting to a new language, healthcare system, and social norms. Despite these hurdles, Legeros cherishes the rich Mexican culture and advises potential movers to embrace local customs and community. He warns that those seeking merely a cheaper lifestyle without cultural engagement might be better off staying in the US. For Legeros, the adventure and cultural curiosity make retiring abroad a rewarding experience. South China Morning Post. Australian universities are sounding the alarm over the government's proposed caps on international student numbers, warning that such a move could lead to significant economic losses and thousands of job cuts. The policy, aimed at addressing post-COVID migration concerns and a national housing shortage, is seen as an overreach by educational institutions. Luke Sheehy, CEO of Universities Australia, emphasized the sector's critical role in the economy, second only to mining, and projected that the cap could result in a loss of $4.3 billion Australian dollars and 14,000 jobs. The government, already tightening visa rules and increasing application fees, faces criticism for potentially damaging Australia's reputation and its lucrative international education industry. The Sydney Morning Herald. As the Australian government presses forward with capping international student numbers, universities are warning of catastrophic outcomes, including the loss of 14,000 jobs. Luke Sheehy of Universities Australia criticized the policy as politically motivated, arguing that it unfairly scapegoats international students for the housing crisis. The legislation, which also grants the education minister unprecedented powers to impose course-level caps, has been described as a political maneuver ahead of the next election. Critics argue that this approach could devastate the sector, with Go8 universities alone facing a potential economic hit of over $5.3 billion. Independent education bodies also warn that hard caps could force many private colleges to close, exacerbating the already dire situation caused by tightened visa rules. The Globe and Mail. Rob Cerniak, a columnist for The Globe and Mail, reflects on the growing trend of millennials like himself opting for long-term travel over settling down, driven by the unaffordable housing market and the rise of remote work. Cerniak argues that for his generation, traditional milestones like homeownership are increasingly out of reach, making travel a more viable and financially sound option. He highlights the systemic issues in Canada's housing market, including weak tenant protections and the mislabeling of rental projects as affordable. Cerniak calls on politicians to address these issues head-on, suggesting that meaningful housing reforms are necessary to prevent young Canadians from seeking stability abroad. As he contemplates his return to Canada, he urges elected officials to take decisive action to make the country more livable and economically sustainable for future generations. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.
Got a question in your mind, we'll find the answer, we'll be kind. Encyclopedia on everything, laugh and learn with the zing, zing, zing. From ends to outer space, we've got the facts in one great place. For kids and grown-ups too, we've got the A to Z for you. Got a question in your mind, we'll find the answer, we'll be kind. Encyclopedia on everything, laugh and learn with the zing, zing, zing. From ends to outer space, we've got the facts in one great place. For kids and grown-ups too.